I remember this was maybe about 3 or 4 months into joining Mark in the Facebook team that Mark came up to me and he was just like, yo, dude, you have to write a search engine for Facebook. And then my first thought was like, I have zero idea about how to write a search engine. And why don't we go hire somebody from Google or Yahoo? They know how to make search engines, so they should come and make search engines. And I remember very clearly, Mark is like, yeah, we could, or you could just write it. And guess what? I didn't know how to write Facebook until I built Facebook. Hi everyone, I'm Aditya Agarwal. I was in the first handful of engineers at Facebook. I was the CTO at Dropbox after that. And now I am a general partner at South Park Commons. And my passion is building things. I love building technology, love building products, love building companies. That, the fact that I get to do that as my day job is something that I tremendously enjoy on a daily basis. I was born in India, but I grew up mostly in Southeast Asia. I grew up mostly Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, spent a little bit of time in China as well. And then I came to America to go to university. I went to Carnegie Mellon for computer science, got a couple of degrees. And then unlike most of my friends who went to Wall Street to work, for hedge funds, quant funds, PE firms, consulting, I was like, I want to build software. So I moved out to the Bay Area and I worked at Oracle for about a year. And Oracle had really interesting technical problems, but I was looking for something that was more fast-paced, that was really able to move a lot faster. I happened to get introduced to Mark through a common friend. Mark was about 19 years old at that time. He had just moved out from Harvard. This is one of the beautiful things of Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, people want to connect people. I had no idea who Mark was. And I'll be honest, I had no idea what Facebook was because Facebook launched at Carnegie Mellon after I graduated. So I'd never used the product. So I went to meet Mark because somebody said, this is a really, passionate, intense young person. Go meet him. See, you might enjoy the conversation. It was a short conversation with him. It only lasted 15-20 minutes. We discussed some of the technical challenges and we discussed a little bit about hey man, why are you doing this? Why is this fun? I did not know much about the product, but I was very sure that I would have fun when I was working at Facebook and I would learn from the people because they were also intense. They were driven, they were ambitious. I think that when people make decisions about companies to start, I think oftentimes, outside of Silicon Valley, the question is oh, what did you see in the idea? Did you understand it was going to be such a big thing? And I think what they miss out is that early days, you don't know. You can have a good idea. An idea that felt good could be bad, vice versa. But what you do know is that this is a person that I want to work with. This is an interesting person who has interesting ideas and we will iterate our way to build something great. And that's exactly how I felt about Mark. I still remember when I decided to join Facebook, I called my mom and dad and they were like, you're crazy. Why are you leaving your well-paid, safe kind of job? You just got there. Why not spend the next 3 or 4 years building up a base of savings? But I think I always was just man, if I'm not going to take a risk when I'm 23, when am I going to take a risk? And then I spent the next 6 years. I remember this was maybe about 3 or 4 months into joining Mark in the Facebook team that Mark came up to me and he was just like, yo, dude, you have to write a search engine for Facebook. And then my first thought was I have zero idea about how to write a search engine. And why don't we go hire somebody from Google or Yahoo? They know how to make search engines, so they should come and make search engines. And I remember very clearly, Mark is like, yeah, we could, or you could just write it. And guess what? I didn't know how to write Facebook until I built Facebook. And I remember thinking very clearly that he's right. There is nothing I can't do. He had a version of this question that he was asking himself at the point that he built Facebook, right? And the key difference between Mark and everyone else is that a lot of people talked about ideas, he built it. So I can also go ahead and build it. That small episode of just being challenged that why do you think you cannot do this is something that I hold very dearly. I strongly believe that if there's anything that needs to be built, given time and energy, smart people can figure out things that they otherwise don't know how to do, right? Otherwise, there's no way a startup has a right to succeed because every founder eventually ends up having to do finance, marketing, sales, right? They're not finance experts, they're not marketing experts, they're not sales experts, but they figure it out. So I think that one episode has had a very big, I would say, effect on my life in terms of how I think about what I'm able to do and I should be able to do. I am helping to guide the work of hundreds of engineers. I've never managed hundreds of engineers. Why am I qualified for this job? I would ask myself that question. Sure, there are plenty of people who might have managed bigger, like who might be managing thousands of engineers. That doesn't mean that they're the right fit to manage product engineering at Facebook, because I'm able to bring a certain amount of love for the product, context around the product, historical legacy. In some ways, like I'm intimately familiar with everything that's kind of going on in this organization. So I think a lot of the times people tend to discount their own experience, and they think that like, oh, what I've done is not that interesting, but somebody else has done something that's much more interesting. And I tell people like, why? Don't discount your own experience. It actually might be much more relevant to essentially what you're doing. I'd been at Facebook for 6 or 7 years, and it was really one of the most remarkable moments in my life, if you will, because I just learned a lot. My time there was coming to an end. I decided that my passion really was at the earliest stages of company creation. So while it was very sad to leave a company that I still care about to this day, I'm like, you know what, Facebook's gonna be fine. They have an incredible set of people kind of taking it forward. So I left, and then Ruchi, me and Akhil, with the 3 co-founders of Cove, and we were working on a modern collaboration software company. And our realization really was that it is still way too difficult for knowledge workers to communicate and collaborate on all of the work that they have. It's all stuck behind kind of like intranets and LANs and file servers. So how do we really take all of that information, embed communication into it, and kind of make it a first-class citizen for people to be able to use in their workplaces? We've been working on it for a couple of years. We were going along quite well. We had a bunch of strong early kind of like users. We had raised a bunch of capital. Cove was progressing quite well. And essentially then Drew and Arash, who were the 2 co-founders of Dropbox, decided like, hey guys, do you want to join forces? Dropbox is also being used to essentially improve collaboration. Our North Stars are very similar. So why don't we join forces? They bought our company. After the acquisition, I was the chief technology officer there. At Facebook, one of the common taglines on the wall was, do not let perfect be the enemy of good. And at Dropbox, kind of a good tagline, actually, there were a number, but like the important was sweat the details. Like get all of the small details right, because if you screw up one of them, our product will not like feel great. And I do think that those are pretty different things. They were both cultures that really valued amazing technology, strong product, and great design. These were things that applied to both Facebook and Dropbox. But I do think some things were different. A big one was that at Facebook, historically, we were move fast and break things. And I think some of that was because in the early days, Facebook was not really operating in mission critical environments. If you were trying to share a photo of a friend or something, and you had to repeat that action 2 or 3 times, not the end of the world. So we could adopt a lot of, I would say, practices that were designed to fail fast but allow for some bugginess, right? Like that was kind of our overriding philosophy. At Dropbox, though, one of the key differences in our culture was that throughout our culture, it was very much like you had to be ultra reliable, ultra low latency, ultra high throughput, ultra secure. And the analogy I give people is that if once out of every 1,000 times you try to access facebook.com and it doesn't work, you're like, whatever, I'll retry. If once out of every 1,000 times your hard drive fails on you, you will think your computer is broken. It was this fundamental realization which I think ended up really affecting large parts of both companies' culture in many different ways. And, over the years, I think what I tell my startups today is that there is no one right or wrong culture. Right? Like, do not try to go and take Google's, Amazon's, Facebook's, or Stripe's, whatever culture and put it onto your company. Find out like the culture and the values that make sense for your mission, for your product. So I think it's both a question of finding out what works for you. And then once you find out and you articulate it, make sure you grow it. The role of a CTO, the North Star that I had as a CTO is that I deeply cared about making sure that we were making good technical decisions, and also that our team was operating at like maximal productivity. We are getting the world's best engineers to come and join us on this mission. I want to give them the best place to work at in terms of the amount of leverage that they have and in terms of the tooling, the code base and everything. With that North Star, every 6 months, I would say how to do that changed. Satisfying that constraint at like when the engineering team is 20 people, or when I joined, when we got acquired, it was 12 people, to when I left, it was 1,500 to 2,000 people. Like Those are pretty different things. At a fast growing company, I mean, I'll talk about this for the CTO, but I think this is actually important for any manager, executive leader at a fast growing company, is that the most dangerous thing is you think you have your job figured out, right? Because the job will be different in 6 months. And if you are doing the same things today as you were a year ago, you're probably doing a bunch of things wrong. And this comes back to what we talked about earlier. I think that one of my favorite taglines is that the only thing that remains constant in hypergrowth is change. I think after leaving Dropbox, I was definitely I was deep in the rabbit hole of I've been lucky enough work at a number of different amazing companies, like Facebook, Cove, Dropbox, Flipkart. I've helped to build a bunch of products that I'm very proud of. I made a bunch of money. Yet there's a question what is the point? Why am I doing what I'm doing? It took me a while to figure out. I kind of realized that I like building things. I like building it with, I would say, driven, highly connected, highly motivated teams. I like operating at the frontier. 200 years ago, I would have been the first people to come out to the gold, California. I like being at the frontier of things. And for me, I love the act of creation. It's like Prometheus discovering fire. I created something from nothing. That's a pretty amazing, intoxicating feeling, if you will, right? It was pretty clear that I was able to do those things in a really powerful and leveraged way at South Park Commons. The way we have tried to build South Park Commons is this realization that you need some time to figure out what you are going to build. And I think a lot of these accelerators are really designed to, by definition, accelerate, right? And our take is that, well, you might want to go slow first, right? Take your time, figure out which mountain you want to climb. -1 to 0 is when you're figuring out which mountain you want to go climb. 0 being the base of the mountain. And then, phase 1 is, kind of base camp to camp 1 to camp 4 to kind of the summit. It's something unique that we have come up with at South Park Commons. And I think previously to South Park Commons, you were supposed to go figure out the mountain in your own living room. And we're like, no, come do it at SPC. We're going to provide you with the support to do that. So what support do we provide? The first thing is that it's important to give people a physical home. So we have a physical place in San Francisco and in New York. Sometimes when you leave a company or a startup, it can feel really disorienting because you kind of went to this place, you woke up every day. This was an important part of your life. You went to this office, you lived your life, you built your things there. And then suddenly one day you're no longer at this startup or office or company and you don't know what to do. So it's important to give people a place that they can go to. Once they're there, I'd say one of the biggest things that we provide is a highly carefully curated community of other people who are really smart, really driven, and are also in the same phase, right? Because think about it, it's very lonely to figure out what you want to work on. And instead, what we are saying is that don't worry, there are the smart people who are also in that same phase, right? You will make better decisions, find better mountains if you interact with those people. I would say that is maybe one of the most important things that we do, that we give people a chance to find each other in this phase, in this -1 to 0 phase. There's another part to it, which is that we provide what we call programming or scaffolding. And a lot of our philosophy in kind of that part is we cannot give people a playbook to start a company. There is no course I can teach. There is no template, checklist, project, whatever I can give them. But what I can do is I can come up with ways of bootstrapping creativity. I can help you turn that blank piece of paper into 10 interesting ideas. I can give you ways of discussing those ideas with other smart people. I can give you a nudge to go to write that first line of code, to design that first pixel, or maybe to have that first customer conversation. So we have a lot of programs that help you kind of get started, because it's always that first line of code that's the hardest, But once you get going, I know that everybody at SPC is technical and they can build something. And the last thing is, say we're very generous with our time. Anybody at SPC, they can come find time with me, with Ruchi, with our other partners. We're all, I would say we have been doing this for a while, and we don't differentiate between people who we have funded versus not. If you're at SPC, come talk to us. I'll give you feedback on the idea, right? Once you start climbing, you can go fast, great. But it's more important to identify the mountain. So yeah, what Grant was saying, that I want to take the time to do category creation. By the way, category creation, hardest thing to do for a startup. It is really hard, right? It is much easier to go take an existing category, build another product. Category creation is in some ways the hardest part of an already hard thing, which is a startup. So I do think that do we encourage founders to take bigger risks? Absolutely. I think the most fun part of my job in some ways, but also in sometimes the hardest, is that to convince a founder hey, your idea is good. You can probably get funding, but I don't think you should do it. I actually want you to throw away this good thing in pursuit of a great one. And this is in some ways another way to explain why STC exists. I want people to take the biggest risks, take the biggest swings, find the biggest mountain, and that's gonna be our calling from day one.